Michelle. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a senior software engineer at Netflix. I am not a project manager. So, why am I doing a talk about project management? Regardless of our roles, we all need to embrace our inner project manager to truly succeed as engineers. If you don't have a project manager right now, this talk will give you the skills to help your team thrive. If you do have a project manager, the talk still has tips for you because the focus is going to be on the project and not on your career. We'll dive into the realm of managing and documenting ourselves effectively, ensuring that our tasks align with the needs of our team, company, and personal goals. You don't want to waste your limited time, and you also want to think about your personal brand. A manager once told me he liked that when I said I would get something done, I got it done. That stuck with me because I did not realize that was unusual. That other people don't plan all their tasks and then add lots of breathing room for the unexpected. So I always got done what I said I was going to get done. I also found it unusual to document my work and contributions to prepare for whatever is coming. Most people wait until they have to. The performance review is coming, they decide they want a promotion, or they get laid off. Then they scramble to remember what they did 6 months ago. So instead of being reactive, let's be proactive. Not only will we be ready to go, but our hard work branding our team could also be critical to our success. When management is looking to do cuts, make it easy for them not to pick you or your team. I've been working in tech for about 13 years now. The more I leveled up, the more ambiguous requests I would get. Early in my career, I'd get bugs or tasks assigned to me that were very clear. When the user does this, this happens, or add this specific feature. Now it's more, using your expertise, decide what needs to get done next. Without using project management tools, I would be floundering. I leveled up my personal project management skills with my engineering skills. 18 months ago, I looked at my team and realized we weren't all using those project management skills. I'd seen this repeatedly in my career, where a skilled team didn't have the velocity that they could have, which is like a little more process. So after a year of dramatic improvement, I put this talk together so you too can help your team and help yourself. So I messed up a little. I changed the slides, and that whole thing was supposed to be this slide. So I'm just going to move on. So how did I change my team? I started with building team consensus. No one likes to hear, hey, you're doing your work all wrong, but don't worry. I'm here to fix it. Just do everything I say without questioning it. People just don't like being told what to do, even if it's a good idea, especially since I don't have a manager's official power. But even if I did, I'd follow a similar process because we're all professional adults and top-down directives barely get enthusiastic buy-in. The first step is getting everyone to agree that there actually is a problem and then what the problem is. No one will try a new thing if they think everything is going great, even if that's not the perception from the outside. It's important to bring the team together and focus on the same root cause. That won't happen if they're busy blaming other people or teams instead of our team's process. So I present the problem as I see it. I ask the team, do you agree this is a problem? If not, do you think there is a problem? If there is, what do you think it is? I might have to use evidence from stakeholders, but usually the team can tell when something is off, when it doesn't feel like we're running on all cylinders. If at any point during the discussion they try to veer into a solution, I cut it off completely. In this case, we narrow the problem down to a perceived lack of progress. Our stakeholders thought we were just like hanging out playing video games instead of making any new features. We all knew our team was working hard, but felt like we weren't getting a lot of output. So how do we change that? When you open the floor for solutions to a process problem, you'll get so many ideas, similar to bike shedding. Since it's hard to quantify a correct process solution, like a technical problem, it's easy to get lost in the theory. However, the only way to really know if a process change will work is to actually try it. Will people actually follow the new process, or is the administrative work too burdensome? Will it actually solve the problem? I made sure to listen to my team, but instead of doing a lot of back and forth, either in a meeting or with a drawn out feedback process, I asked for a trial. Let's just try something new for 1 quarter, just 3 months, and if we don't like it or want to tweak it, we can do it when we actually have the data on how well it worked. The other important thing is to note is not try too many things simultaneously. Even if you've identified more than one problem or have like big ideas, we're going to make all this change, you shouldn't do it all at once. You should do it gradually. Think of it like a code change that's gotten too big. You know those PRs that someone sends you to review and you're like, I can't. It's like too much. You need like 5 PRs. You want those small incremental changes so people can easily digest them and implement them. So another thing that's going to happen here is that you'll need to do glue work. And also, this is my favorite new slide. I don't know why that's a stock image, but it's amazing. If you're unfamiliar with the term, you'll need to watch this entire presentation by Tanya Riley immediately after this. As soon as you're done with JCON, go watch Tanya Riley's talk on glue work. It will really change your perspective on administrative work in engineering teams. But a quick summary is that glue work is all the administrative work that keeps a team moving well. You know, like writing the tickets and the documentation and kind of like making everything work. The downside is it can be tedious, unappreciated, and take away from your technical growth. If you're too busy writing reports, you're not writing Java. So I have a couple of tips to prevent that here. While this isn't the first thing someone thinks of as a technical skill, it actually is extremely valuable to your company, your team, and to you. You will increase your team's velocity so your company can do more things and make more money. This should be a big highlight when working on your next job or promotion, and definitely be on your resume and all of that. Next, you want to make it as easy for yourself as possible. I have a confession for all of you here. I love new organizational tools. I hate using the ones I already have, and I just can't get enough of it. I try Evernote, then Airtable, then Notion. It's just like whatever new one comes out, that's the one I'm going to try. I spent like too much time finally learning how to use Jira as well. I just want to make everything pretty with like different colored labels and full of automation and perfect. However, this takes a lot of time when your process is in flux. So for my team, I pushed down my natural instincts to enjoy whatever the new organizational tool is. And I just use a Google Doc. Like, it's just so simple and straightforward. Just one document with all the information for all the planning. It's easy to edit, easy to share. It can get messy. It's not as nice as the other things, but when you're still figuring things out, you might as well just stay messy. Like making any software, just get the features working, and then maybe later, if it's all perfect, you can make it pretty. One step that is often missed in planning a process change is the migration plan. I've seen it happen when people have the great idea for change, but no one manages to make the transition without a migration plan. The old process just drags on indefinitely. They say we're going to do this, but like no one gets to it. So how do you wind down what you're doing gracefully so the new process can be started? In my case, I had everyone write a short summary of everything they were doing. Just like write it down. I had them include a stopping point for each thing that they're doing they could get to in the next 1 to 2 weeks. I didn't want it going longer than that, just one sprint. I also had them include a mini proposal of what could happen next if they were going to continue. What other features would they build? What would the next phase be? And if any project, it's always good to find a spot where you can say, at this point, it's good enough. It's good enough to get feedback. And then reevaluate improvements or future phases after that. Then you can take all those, here's what we want to do next, ideas, and include them in our first exercise. So I don't want to just talk to you about what you should do, but also show you ways to do it. This is an impact effort matrix. The y-axis is impact, and the x-axis is effort. This will help you visualize what is important. I've done it in person with actual sticky notes on a whiteboard, or you can do it virtually with any collaborative app. There are lots of options, like Google has one, there's a Miro board, I'm sure there's like a ton of them. So first you give everyone time to write out every project or task they'd like to do as like a 2 or 3 word summary, each on individual notes. These all go into this like big pool. Then you do a quick dedupe, because a lot of times people write the same thing, and then letting them choose what bucket they go into. Is it high impact, low effort, high impact, high effort, low impact, high effort, and low impact, low effort? This is like a deceptively simple exercise because not everyone has that same mental model of impact versus effort. I call it like a feelings exercise rather than a data-driven decision making. I tell the team not to think too hard on the first pass, just put them down. The important part is now this will drive the discussion. So when everyone is done, I start at high impact, low effort. The first mistake people usually make is thinking that something is low effort. How often have you said, oh yeah, that seems so easy, I can just like get that done, and then like 2 months later you still haven't fixed it? So I asked the person who put it there, is it really low effort? Can you get this task entirely done in, say, 2 weeks with 1 or 2 people? If yes, it stays. If not, I say this sounds like high effort, high impact. We can either move it over or rewrite it with a smaller scope. Is there a research or design task that can be done quickly to prove whether we should continue the work on the feature? Can we do a wireframe demo or a messy version of the feature to see if it works? Then it can stay in high impact, low effort. It's always helpful to prove out those big projects with small tasks first anyway, so we have the data to decide if we should make a more significant resource investment. When the high impact tasks are all moved to the appropriate effort square, I then question whether they're in the right impact square. Will this actually have a high impact? Sometimes users complain about something a lot, but it's not actually something that happens often. For example, something that wastes 30 seconds a month versus wasting 30 seconds a day. Not that these can be ignored, but it's good to label them correctly so you know how to prioritize. It can also be informative to think not just about what impact this will have once it's complete, but the opposite. What would the impact be if we didn't do this at all? What are the negative impacts of deprioritizing this task? For the low impact, low effort, it's good to mix these in every once in a while, especially if it buys some goodwill from the people who've been complaining about wasting 30 seconds a month. It's a quality of life issue. It's not preventing the app from working, but it's nice to have. Like, if your basement door squeaks when you open it, that's like super annoying every time, and every time you think, I should fix that. But you can still get into the basement, so you forget about it immediately after you leave the basement. It's just like that. So for the low impact, high effort, I just throw those in the trash. These will suck up your time without actually being good for the product, aka thankless tasks. I would just make sure they aren't like secretly high impact. Sometimes something like tech debt or security updates can be seen as low priority, when the lack of progress can have a high negative impact. So at the end of this exercise, your team should have a list of tasks. Now it's time to talk to the stakeholders about prioritization. I like to think of stakeholders at 3 different levels. The management at the top is anyone from right above you to the C-suite. These stakeholders are focused on the business goals and revenue impact of your work. They don't care about the how, just like how many resources you need and what does that get them? What is your ROI? They should be able to provide a broad framework of business priorities for you to start. Also, if the team decides to work on something that's not a management priority, they should be prepared with a justification when management says, why are you working on this, instead of gaining more users or getting more sales. That next level is your first team. That's anyone you need to collaborate with to get a larger technical project done. Think your DevOps team or your designers, any other team you're working with. You need to fit your priorities to them so you aren't blocked. If you can't move a project along, either it needs to be deprioritized or that team needs more resources or needs to reprioritize. So it's all a negotiation. Finally, there are your users, the primary users of your service or product, from the general public to other engineers at your company. Sometimes they'll volunteer feedback, but you'll get more if you proactively ask for it or even shadow them while they use it. I just did this recently and I was like, why didn't you tell me about all these bugs? He's like, I don't know. I just left it. I'm like, all right, I'll fix these. So for all your stakeholders, you need effective communication. There are a few things that you can do. First is set clear expectations about what your team can complete and when you can complete it. You don't want to overpromise to impress anyone. You're not going to impress them. They're just going to ask for more the next time. Providing more than what you said you would provide is always better than not doing what you promised. And then you need that buffer because it always seems easier than it is, or someone has a sick day, or it's just like there's no way you can get things done in the time you said. So just like add 3 more days. And then communicate often. There are never too many asynchronous updates. When I say communicate often, I don't mean meetings. Like, just don't add any more meetings. They're the worst. But you can just write something up and say, hey, here's my update. On the extreme end, on a very sensitive project, I was doing like a daily update. Though most only need like weekly or quarterly updates in most of the projects I've done. I find that people like seeing progress, even if it's like, I tried these 5 things yesterday and none of them worked, so I'm going to try 5 more things today. They just like hearing that you were doing something. So, as part of communicating often is sharing changes as soon and as clearly as possible. Any changes that might push the date of when you will provide your task. So, saying things like, this problem is blocking us. This person had to change projects, so we're less one resource. Hiding problems just gets people mad at you. You want to treat people as professionals, reasonable adults, and sometimes they will be. For technical stakeholders, it can help to explain the whole problem so they can't keep thinking, that sounds so easy. Why is this taking so long? And sometimes they can help you rearrange priorities or get new resources to actually get it done anyway, instead of you working all night, which is the worst. Okay, so I'm going to show you the second exercise. One of the challenges I experienced was not getting clear information from the stakeholders. I theorized that I was asking for too much by having a blank page and then asking them to fill it in and tell me their priorities. Instead, I turned it around. I brought a list of projects to them that I thought they might like and then let them vote. That way, they had something to start the conversation instead of them just like blanking. So this is how it looks. This list of projects could get done in approximately a quarter. 3 months. We had short descriptions of the project and kind of a list of artifacts. These artifacts varied depending on what the project or feature was. They could be similar to a KPI like speed up the landing page by 50% or focus on a demo. When this is done, we'll be able to show this button to the stakeholders and show it working. So we had something to work towards. Then I gathered representatives from each stakeholder team and said you get 3 votes each. It's important not to like get everyone in the room. You don't want like 20 people trying to like figure things out. Just like, hey, you are making the decision for the DevOps team, or you're making the decision for this team, and we need to bring you together and vote on this. So I gave them 3 votes each, and just put their names on a Google Doc under the projects that were most important to their team. I was worried that there would be a spread of votes across all the projects, and then we actually won't be able to prioritize everything. But in reality, given the complete list, most people voted for the same thing. They were able to see what was important to them, and then I was able to say, great, this is what we'll do. So after you have a strategy in place, it's time to talk tactics. This means having a plan for daily and weekly project tracking. Instead of focusing on the details of the solution, such as saying, hey, everyone should have 2-week sprints, I'd like to set goals and keep the process flexible. If the process hits the goals, then the process is correct. So my 2 goals are simple and transparent. Simple means limiting administrative overhead. If there are lots of meetings and work to manage documentation, that takes away from solving the actual technical and business problems. It also means that people just won't do it. They'll just forget and be like, oh, I'd rather work on this. Or they'll do it once and never do it a second time, no matter how many times you bug them. So, especially when you're starting a new process, you want to make it as easy as possible to follow. The minimum amount of tasks to produce improvement. When people get used to that one change, and it's working, then you can add more changes in. Transparency means it should be easy for anyone on the team to see everyone else's task list. There should be no secret, undocumented work. If work is reprioritized, it should be clear what had to be pushed. This helps with the following 2 goals. If you can quickly see how much work the team and individuals are doing, you can see if they've taken on too much or too little. Predictable velocity, to me, is picking up a reasonable amount of work for a given amount of time and finishing pretty much most of it. You don't want to have lots of spare time, be frantically trying to finish, or constantly pushing tickets from week to week with no end. It doesn't feel good. Transparency makes it clear when the team has that last in, first mentality. We've all had that situation where you have your project plan and then suddenly 2 days in you get something else, and 3 days in something else, and oh, this is an emergency, you got to do that. And then it throws everything away. If you're constantly being derailed by these new tasks and not actually able to finish the planned work, it's super demoralizing and it lowers your team's velocity. There's also that cost to changing tasks. Transparency can also solve siloing, or only having one person be an expert for a specific part of the product. Siloing is actually 2 bad things at once. If that person leaves, no one else knows how to fix that thing, and it'll take them longer to get up to speed without someone to ask why they did that. The second bad thing is that first person is definitely going to leave because doing only one thing gets boring. People who are excited about technology, want to stretch and learn new things, are going to get bored in a silo. So it's better to know when people are starting to gravitate to the same area because, they know it so well, and just try to nudge them in a different direction. Like, hey, maybe pick up a ticket over here or pick something up and, change things around. So again, I'm not going to prescribe having these less sprints and meetings every Tuesday or anything like that. I said, look at your current practice and say, is this process simple? Is it transparent? So remember when I said at the beginning that we had to do some documentation? This is it. Think back. Do you remember what you did 3 months ago? I live in Los Angeles. I can't even use the weather to help me remember. 3 months ago was a sunny day, 72 degrees, and something happened. Just like today and then tomorrow. So how do you remember? You write it down. I know I said to limit administrative work, but this is necessary. I use a specific format that helps both my personal growth and communication to my stakeholders, especially management. These are called success statements. Success statements are short, easy to read sentences that describe a specific accomplishment. They're designed to highlight the impact of the success first, then how it was accomplished. It should be high level enough that anyone internally can understand and be impressed by it, from your boss to 3 bosses up. Some tasks are easier than others to translate and can take time to get good at writing success statements, but it's helpful to be able to communicate to management in their language. So they should be similar to a resume bullet point, around 100 to 200 characters. It's always great if you can show impact and cost savings or profit, because that's what everyone loves. But time also works, since salary is a considerable expense. And the less time someone has to do something, they can do something else. Accomplishments like increased sales or reduced storage costs would be a direct monetary impact. At the same time, save a coworker 30 minutes a week by automating a task is an indirect financial impact through salary savings and increased productivity. Okay, so this is a success statement. I improved this thing by this measurable amount using this method. Every time I write them, I put this at the top of my screen so that I don't get it wrong. And then I rewrite them because I get them wrong all the time. But then it's like this. So here's some examples. I added a new way for customers to find us, increasing sales 15% by connecting with a third-party API. I reduced storage costs by $500 monthly by switching to a different storage system. I reduced the time spent doing manual tests 60 minutes weekly by creating automated tests. These are all, I improved this thing by this measurable amount using this method. At the end of the quarter, you and your team should have a ton of these. The next step is to kind of smush them all together in a summary. You'll be amazed how much impact you've had, and your stakeholders will be delighted. I once had a mentor tell me that everyone thinks they can get more done in a day, and everyone underestimates how much they can get done in a month. So having all these success statements together, you can see, wow, look how much I actually got done in the last 3 months. So what do you do next? You celebrate. Or, as my second favorite new stock image, you look in some other direction. I have no idea what everyone else is having a party, and he's like, what's over there? I don't know, I thought it was fun. So I noticed that many teams will skip any sort of review and just start the next project. There are a few reasons that I think this is a missed opportunity. First of all, there's team morale. Work can seem pointless if it's just kind of an unending stream of tickets without stopping to celebrate. Why am I working so hard? What impact am I having? Pausing to look at everything the team accomplished can reinvigorate them for that next chunk of work. You don't necessarily need a pizza party, just acknowledge the hard work of the last quarter. But also, a pizza party doesn't hurt, just something that everyone will enjoy. Second, you can check in and say, are we on the right track? Are we doing impactful work? Were we able to get done what we said we would do? If not, why not? I like to focus on issues with the process here instead of on individuals. I would ask, did we take on too many last-minute requests? Instead of asking, John, why didn't you do any work? If John didn't do any work and your process has transparency, that will be easy to see and should be addressed privately and not as part of the process change. The third is showing off to management. Showing off can have a bad connotation, but I think of it as providing context to management. I always want to make things easy for management. Make it easy for them to see how great my team is, and easy for them to make decisions in our favor. I don't want them to wonder, I don't know what this team does. Maybe we don't need them. Never. Instead, they should think, wow, that team is so productive. They're a real asset to the company. Let's cut this other team. Finally, there's career resilience. I have a whole separate talk about this, but I'll summarize. Resiliency is about being ready to explain what you've been working on and your impact at any time. You never know when you'll have to find a new job quickly, but you do know you'll eventually have a performance review. Having all your accomplishments already documented means you're ready for it. You notice these reasons include something for everyone. Something for the individual in the career advancement, something for the team in the showing how great you are, and then something for management where they don't have to ask you any questions, they're just getting that information proactively. The same task can rarely be a win for every group in your company. It's also great for people who don't want to do this because it's extra work and not fun, like solving a technical problem. You can convince them by appealing to their altruism, by saying, oh, it's for the team, can you help us out? Or appeal to their selfishness and say, oh, this is for your resume. Definitely, let's put it together to make sure you have a great brag sheet. So, I mentioned on the last slide, bragging to management. Have some water first. Let's dig a little deeper into how to do that. All reports at work are really marketing reports. Marketing is all about the audience. For anything involving marketing, you should put your audience first. What information do they want? What do you want them to know about your team? What do you want them to feel about your team? See, we're all ad execs now. For management, you want them to feel that this is just the best, most impactful team ever. But management, they're busy. They don't want to know the details, just clear facts they can report to their bosses. The actual format to use depends on your company. Is there already a standard memo format or email newsletter each department uses for reporting? Use that. If you don't have a template to use, ask your boss or your skip boss. What information is the most useful to them? What do they report to their managers? Don't hesitate to change things around and find out the format you use isn't working. It's better to do more work and be effective instead of sticking with a format you like that doesn't work. So I initially did a newsletter because I saw a bunch of other teams doing newsletters. And then it turns out that everyone sends newsletters and nobody reads the newsletters, especially management. So then I looked around and saw, oh, this is the memo that the managers write to each other about what things are going on. And I just copied that template and used it for my team. And everyone was like, oh, this is great. And then my skip boss was able to just send it to his boss without even having to do anything. It was great for them. Great for me. So as for the content, you want to stick to impact first, like with the success statements. So it'd be one big success statement. This is the impact we had. This is how we did it. You can link to more detailed information if they really want to know everything and all your successes, but likely they're going to kind of just skim for highlights. If there was a problem that quarter, depending on the management, they might want you to include them. What are the lowlights? Ideally, you had clear communication and they knew there was an issue before this report. It should just simply state the problem, why it happened, and what the next step is. This project got pushed because a newer high priority project came in. This is when we'll do this project. Or we're never going to do this project and we'll just have to live with it. So now that you're done changing the process, it's time to document that. So even more documenting. But this one doesn't take as long. So something I've noticed time and again, both in my career and socially, is that someone will be passionate about community building. They will build a book club or spearhead a new project, and it'll be very successful. Everyone will come. It'll be super fun. And then they move on. They move. They go to a new company, and it completely falls apart. The last thing we want is for all your hard work to fall apart when you get that well-deserved promotion. So the first thing I did was write an SOP, or Standard Operating Procedure. SOP is a common business tool to document processes. It's a living document as processes get adjusted over time. Editing this slide reminded me, oh, when's the last time I updated my SOP? I better go do that because I'm going to be in Germany and not at work. So I like to order it by time. And here are some examples. So like week 9, schedule this. Week 10, do the next thing. These are really short, so I don't have too much text on the presentation, but they should be actually as verbose as possible. Who should be in the meeting? Is there an agenda template for the meeting, etc.? As you write up everything you did, for example, anything that involves a meeting, you should see if you can automate it. Can you schedule it in advance in perpetuity, say every 12 weeks or forever? Or if you need to generate a JIRA report and send team reminders, that can all be automated. So then your SOP gets shorter because the automation is in place. The next step is identifying other team members who can help now and not just pick it up when you leave. Reading an SOP and trying to follow it with no backup can be daunting. You always think there's more information in there than there actually is. Think about documenting your software project and handing the document to someone, and then they ask you 100 questions anyway. So it's good to have someone shadow you and follow along before you leave. Then they can try leading themselves when you're there to answer questions and fill in any gaps you missed in the SOP. So teams and jobs are unique, and ideally you've been thinking throughout this presentation, wow, this is valuable information, but how do I solve my problem for my team? So this is your time. We have about 15 minutes. I put some prompts up there so you can be like, oh, what did we talk about? This is what we talked about today. And if we run out of time today, feel free to find me around the conference or reach out on LinkedIn. Just make sure to add a message or I'll think you're a robot. So just say, hey, I saw your conference talk. Okay, that's it. Whew. Any questions? I heard some of that. I think what you said was, how do you deal with team members in remote and different time zones? Okay. So that's where that asynchronous communication comes in, and having as much as you can, maybe one meeting where you all speak together, but then the rest of the time it's all asynchronous communication. At some point, you all have to agree what work you're going to do for the quarter, and then keep each other updated those other times. But if you can't communicate all together, even one time, someone wakes up at 6 in the morning, it's going to be really difficult because you lose that team cohesion. And then instead, you're just kind of a series of contractors doing work, which is sometimes what can happen. You can't bring the team together. My team's in 3 time zones, so it's not so bad. But yeah, I can see how it could be very difficult if they're all over the world. So I would definitely recommend at least once a quarter meeting, going over the projects, and the rest of the time using something like Slack or email or chat to keep yourselves updated as much as you can. Any other questions? Yeah. Yeah. So it was like a combination of things that like people had told us spontaneously, like, oh, this doesn't work, or I wish we had this feature, or something like that. Like people will mention things, or you'll go to them and say, like, hey, what's wrong? Can I sit with you for 30 minutes and see how you're using the product and write things down? Or you'll look at the product and be like, damn, this page loads so slow. I'm going to put loading this page faster as a project, right? So it's like a combination of that. It really depends on your company too. Sometimes in a company, people are very direct and will tell you, hey, this is what I want next. But I find that most times people are more ambiguous and you have to kind of draw that information out and write it down and then say, hey, is this what you wanted? Is this what you were, I thought you like mentioned this casually, in a meeting. Is this what you want us to do next? And then by like having it all written down, they can get a visual of like, oh, I've asked you for 20 things and you have 3 engineers. Okay, well, I guess here's the 3 things that I would like. Anything else? Okay, great. Yeah, so you have to do both. You can't just like stop being an engineer. Well, first you can try begging repeatedly to have a dedicated project manager, and then they say no. And then you have to do it yourself. So you just talk about how I can't, this is what I can deliver because a quarter of my time is spent on process changes. And then the idea is you make the process simple so that slowly the engineering team doesn't have to do as much. So maybe at first it's a 25% and then it's 20, 10, 15. And it's never going to be as good as if you had a dedicated person. I mean, it's like, you have another engineer, you can do more things. If you had a dedicated project manager, they would know even more than me and they would make things even smoother. But when you don't, you got to work with what you have and try to do that. So I would never say to management, I'm going to spend this entire quarter just doing process improvements. I would just do some of my time with it, do one little thing, and then each quarter try to improve every time. And show that in the documentation. Like, oh, hey, here's a new thing that we tried. Everyone having a good conference? Learning lots of Java things? And now something completely different? I know as soon as I say, okay, we're done, like 10 of you are going to come up here and ask me questions. Okay, well, feel free to come up here or talk to me on LinkedIn. I'm going to shut this down. Thank you.